was a strange episode. It was definitely one where it's like, I get what they're doing. Wasn't quite my humor, though. I definitely think my favorite story was definitely the George storyline. The other stuff was, like, odd. I don't know. It just wasn't my type of humor. The main story is, of course, is the blood itself. Kramer was hoarding blood, like parts of his blood, into a blood bank. But then, I guess his service fees went up, and he wasn't happy about it. He closed his account, and he's storing his blood, I guess in Newman's refrigerator, I think it was. And of course, Jerry was just, like, grossed out by that, because Jerry's grossed out by a lot of things very easily. Jerry, meanwhile, his parents were in town at the beginning of the episode, and they think Jerry's putting on too much weight, and they want to set him up with a personal trainer. Well, this was after actually he had an accident. George's story is he's dating this woman who likes to light incense before having sex. And I guess the incense was driving him nuts, and it was making him hungry. So he's trying to start incorporating like a little more of like a routine into his, his sessions. He first started by adding food, which he added like a pastrami sandwich, which, they showed scenes where he was obviously, him and his girlfriend Tara were, getting it on, and he would like peek his head out from underneath and like pull out like a sandwich and take a bite and go back in. It was like, it's something that I actually found a little humorous. And then of course he actually ended up by making like pudding skins. Like he made them at Jerry's just so he can have them available for whenever he goes over to Tara's. And he has them like in like a drawer right next to his bed or something like that. Just like a strange thing, strange choice. Why pudding skins or pastrami? I don't know. Of course, though, it ends up very messing with his, it basically starts messing with his hormones, basically, or whatnot. And then he tries to top it off by doing, trying to add television into it. Which, of course, he does eventually get caught, and his girlfriend dumps him. So he's out of luck until later in the episode. Then there's Elaine's story. I guess she goes to visit some old friend of hers in the suburbs, who needed like a babysitter for her son Jimmy. But she asked Elaine if she knew anybody responsible, which Elaine takes offense to because her woman's name is Vivian. I guess Elaine takes offense to it because she's like, well, Vivian's making it seem like that I'm not responsible. And of course, who does she try to hire first? Kramer. Elaine actually, pushes Kramer, beats him up just to, get him away and basically, fills in for Kramer as the babysitter. And of course, she finds out that she regrets it because Jimmy's a very troublesome child. Vivian, though, is super impressed, though, by how well she babysat Jimmy, that she told Elaine, I guess, that she's having some health problems. And that if something happens, I guess she basically wants to leave Jimmy in her hands. Which, of course, Elaine does not want because she can't stand the child. She even goes as far as, the next couple times she babysat for him, trying to show she's a bad babysitter, because she comes home and Jimmy's out sleeping in his bed. So Elaine couldn't really find a way out of that, unfortunately. So yeah, Elaine and George at this point, George misses out because he got greedy with his, with trying to add stuff into his sex routine and whatnot, like food and television, and unfortunately, it ends up him getting the boot. Meanwhile, so there's a scene where, and this was a little bit goofy too, I guess it didn't show anything, but just the idea, I'm like, oh, this isn't really funny. So they had, I guess George was making his pudding skins at Jerry's apartment. And then I guess he was using an X-Acto knife. Well, I guess, I forgot what Jerry and Kramer were discussing, but basically Jerry slammed the table on his spatula, and it knocked the X-Acto knife up, and then Kramer says, "Watch out." Of course, we don't actually see it. Of course, that would have been way too gory. But I guess the X-Acto knife cuts Jerry's jugular, and he lost a lot of blood. So he's in the hospital, and he finds out that Kramer gave him 3 pints of his blood. And then, of course, we have Jerry's parents call him, and that's when they set him up with a personal trainer, who ends up being Izzy Mandelbaum, played by Lloyd Bridges, who we just saw him back in the English Patient episode, back in season 8, who the guy who basically got put in the hospital and toughened up, which I'm surprised he would do this after those Dominicans didn't do a good job with their restaurant and whatnot, but I guess he still helped out being a personal trainer. And of course, it's all like a big joke, basically. He's like, I'm going to whoop you into shape, and like, it's just, he basically is not really helping Jerry much at all, unfortunately. But of course, Kramer keeps acting like Jerry owes him for, giving him all his blood, which, Jerry never asked Kramer to do so, but Kramer's taking advantage of the fact that, you owe me. He even ended up getting tricked into having Newman come over, and they were making like sausages in Jerry's kitchen, which Jerry was not buying into at all. And of course, Izzy Mandelbaum walked in on the sausages being made, and he thought that Jerry was slacking off. So they said they were going to turn it up a notch, unfortunately, which drives Jerry even more nuts. But of course, Jerry kicked Kramer and Newman out, and of course they got into a fight about it. And I guess Newman and Kramer got into an argument. And it somehow led to Newman not allowing Kramer to store his blood in his his freezer anymore. So Kramer had to take the blood back to the bank. He was going to open up his account to suck it up again. But the problem though was Kramer asked Jerry if he can borrow his car. He said the AC is broke, and of course he has to keep the blood cold, or else it'll go bad before he gets to the blood bank. So he lets him do this one last favor. Unfortunately, though, it leads to, a big downfall of reality, or whatnot. Because Jerry's car overheats, and of course, by overheating, it says you have to turn off the air conditioner, which Kramer can't do because it's blood. But then, he replaced the oil with his blood. And it wasn't caught until at the end of the episode, whenever they were going to have Jerry run while Izzy and his son were driving a car that Jerry was tied to a rope attached to it. And I guess, as they were driving, some of the blood started to drip, and then Jerry realized that Kramer basically stored his blood in his car. And of course, from Izzy freaking out, he steps in on the gas, and then Jerry's being dragged down the highway by the ropes. Of course, he says in the hospital in the final scene that they thought he was dogging until they realized that he literally did trip over and couldn't get back up, which caused Jerry again to lose blood. But this time, of course, Jerry thought that he got more of Kramer's blood, but Kramer, I didn't give it to you. Who did he end up getting blood from? Newman. To which, of course, Jerry freaked out, and there was like a deleted scene where Jerry was begging the doctor to give him other people's blood, and then Newman was calling him his blood brother, which drove Jerry crazy. And of course, also Elaine trying to get off of being, basically, Vivian's go-to lady for her son if something would happen, or she was having serious health problems apparently. So Elaine decided to bring George along to help put in a bad word for Elaine. Well, unfortunately, that was not the case, because, George, who just gotten dumped, realized, of course, that his hormones not really get turned on from eating up a pastrami sandwich or whatnot. And Vivian is recognizing how she thinks George is knowledgeable, and then she pulled out pastrami, to which, obviously, pulled the trigger on George. And Vivian basically, they both always made it obvious that they both, like to have food incorporated into their sex life. And then they start making out in the kitchen, and then they get on the floor, but then Vivian says, wait, gets up and turns the TV on, and basically is the exact routine. So she hit it out of the ballpark, but then George now is stuck with basically, taking Jimmy if something would happen to Vivian. And George and kids, Not at all. But that's it. It was the blood. Strange episode. Definitely not one of my favorites. I get where they were going with it. I know they were trying to, have, give Jerry a personal trainer and, have, the old man, have, him not really know what he's doing. I don't know, the stuff with the blood was weird. I thought it was, and I thought the story about Jerry, losing blood, I thought it was a little, again, they obviously didn't show any of it, on camera, but just the idea of it, the imagery of it, I'm like, it doesn't really fit. I don't know. I like George's storyline for sure. Elaine's was odd. I don't know, it seemed like, the dark humor in this episode didn't quite hit it off for me, in my opinion. So yeah, definitely one of my least favorite episodes, The Blood. Next up, we got The Junk Mail. Another meh episode. There's some things that, I enjoyed. I do like the story about, Frank and Estelle, kind of like rekindling their romance. It's awkward, but it's funny. Jerry, of course, getting a new car because his got ruined because of Kramer replacing the oil with his blood. So there's a couple things, that I liked about the next episode. We'll talk about that next. So guys, I'll see you guys next time in the Junk Mail. Again, what's your guys' thoughts about The Blood? Do you agree with me? It's a little bit like a odd episode. I don't know. Like I said, it may have been funny for some of you guys, but I don't know. It wasn't quite my humor, in my opinion. But make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure, as always, to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. And follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. And until, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your night. Peace out, buddy.